Welcome to Rebuilding Careers. I'm Bonni Pomush, the CEO of Working Wardrobes, and today I am here with our Chief Revenue Officer, Stefaan Poortman, and our longtime donors and supporters, Terry and Toni McDonald. Welcome.
Thank you.
We are ecstatic to have you here to have a conversation today, and I hope we are able to articulate, each of us, the real joy and empowerment and inspiration that we get and give to Working Wardrobes and from Working Wardrobes. So Working Wardrobes' mission is that we help individuals overcome barriers and challenges so that they can rebuild their career and experience the power of a paycheck. In your career, would you share an experience of someone investing in you and your career? What did they do that made a difference?
Well, I grew up in a family that was absolutely a donation family. My father was married and married to donating to big, not big money, but big activities and things that he could rely to. My nephew have two children that are both developmentally delayed. So my very first donation went to that unit, that kind of a unit, which to me is important. Then came Working Wardrobes, and I had clothes. And as I say, and I told you so, I have donated my clothes and gone back and bought them again.
Well, Toni, there's not that many places where you can donate and purchase it back. I'm glad that you found the organization that works with.
And it is the truth.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, that's your career as a philanthropist too, speaking to us. So thank you for sharing that. That really came from a value from your family. And you also had a professional career. Do you have an example of someone investing in you and your career?
Well, I had somebody say to me, my father, you need to be a teacher. I need to be a teacher. So I went back to school, got my master's degree, and became a teacher. Right here in Santa Ana.
Yes.
Was my very first teaching assignment for many years, and I loved it. I really loved it here. But what I found was that there were a lot of children who didn't have food and didn't have enough. You had to pay for your lunch in those days, and goes back 20 years. You had to pay for your lunch. These kids didn't have money. So I ran into a woman who, at lunchtime, the kids would get packaged carrots, an apple, a sandwich, this. And I said, what do you do with the food? She says, see the box over there? We put all the food that is not open, that is edible, and we pass it out. Mm-hmm. And we give it out after school also, so the kids have it. Mm-hmm. This became my big stand there and take it excitement. And that's one of the things I learned by teaching here, especially.
Wow. And that investment in your career is really in not only speaking to who you already were as a person, but also the power that one person has to make a difference.
Absolutely.
You know, Working Wardrobes was founded on that same principle that our founder, Jerry Rosen, who you know very well, took that credence that I can make a difference. I have power within myself to help other people. And since she took that and ran with it, we have served over 114,000 people. So it's incredible the difference one person can make.
I appreciate it too.
Mm-hmm. Terry, what about you? Do you have an example of in your career someone investing in you, and what did they do that made a difference for you?
Well, I had kicked around the construction industry as a tradesman for a while. And I used to look at retail stores and shopping malls, and I had no idea what kind of a company built those stores, because you typically wouldn't find them in the yellow pages or anything. And so just lo and behold, in the mid 80s, I was looking for a job of some sort. I was a pretty good door hanger, finish carpenter. And I saw this company that was looking for a working superintendent, and they needed to have skills in installing plastic laminate like Formica. So I applied for the job, and I went down and interviewed with the guy. And I said to him, I said, I don't know how to build a retail store, but I have these other skills that you seem to, need. And he says, that's all right. He says, you'll learn how to build a retail store. So he ultimately hired me And he hired me on a Friday and put me on an airplane for Alabama the following Monday morning. And what he did was his number one superintendent, who was in a completely different town building another store. Now, what I didn't realize, what he gave me one of the simplest projects to build, but it didn't seem simple at the time. But of course, I figured that out a couple of years later. But anyway, so he gave me the phone number of Jerry, this fella that I had never met or anything. And he said, when you're in your motel room at night, you write on a yellow tablet all the questions you can think of that you would need to ask somebody, like, what do I do tomorrow morning? What do I do about this? And I would call up Jerry and I would say, I have this list of questions. And so Jerry, from 1,000 miles away on the telephone, would answer all these questions, and I would go in the next day feeling much better equipped to try to do this, because of course the retailer, the people that I'm dealing with, assume that I know what I'm doing. They don't know this is the first time I've ever built one of these. And so I would say offhand that the fellow that hired me, Michael, and then the top superintendent in the company, Jerry, they did all the right things to give me the confidence that, yes, you can, you've never done it before. That's okay. Everybody has to learn how to do these things. And then I made a whole 25-year career out of it.
Terry, that is remarkable. And it's so, it's in the same synergy with which we serve clients, which is you had a skill set, you had a goal, you were able to find a way to bridge that gap through a little bit of risk, right? Someone took a chance on you.
Yeah.
And sometimes here at Working Wardrobes, it's our career coaches and our volunteers who take that chance to really invest in someone and help them build that bridge. That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I'm wondering too, so, Toni, you talked about a career as a teacher. Here at Working Wardrobes, we talk always about the power of a paycheck, that this, a job and being able to earn that paycheck gives you more choices than what you had before. What was your first job? How did you earn your first paycheck?
I worked for my father, selling, he had women's shoe stores with my grandfather, 28 of them.
In Southern California.
Southern California. And I went to work for him. I was 14. I mean, what did you do? You stocked shoes. You did this. And I remember the first thing he said, I need you to go to the Miracle Mile in LA. And you're going to work in the store and you're going to be behind the counter. I mean, 13, 14, 15 years old. And so a woman comes up to me and my job was to sell purses and hosiery. So I said, can I sell you some hosiery and purses? She says, no. I want hosiery and purses. And I was just, as frightening as it was. So that's how I learned went to work. Didn't make very much money, but at least I went to work.
Yeah. How about you, Terry?
My mother and I both went to Hollywood High School in Southern California here. And when I was dating Toni, I called her up from back east where I was building a store, and she had flown there to spend some time with me. And I said, Mom, guess who I'm dating? Now, my mother went to Hollywood High in the 40s, and I went there in the 60s. And so I said to my mom, guess who I'm dating? And she said, who? And I said, well, I'm dating the granddaughter of Mandel's Shoes. Didn't they have a store up on Hollywood Boulevard right up around the corner from the school? And she said, yeah, tell your girlfriend I bought my prom shoes there in 1940.
Unreal. Yeah. And what was your first paycheck? Or how did you earn your first paycheck?
This is sort of a good story. I think as in the 50s and 60s, for boys 12, 13, 14 years old, the most common entry into the working world and making money was the afternoon paper route. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't even have afternoon papers anymore. We're lucky to keep a daily paper, in Southern California. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so my best friend and I had paper routes adjacent to one another. I can remember we had paper routes the day that JFK was assassinated. And as we went through the streets with our papers, people were out on the sidewalks weeping, waiting for us to bring the paper to them. But anyway, what I discovered fairly quickly was this particular paper route that I had with the Herald Examiner at the time and the dealer who had that particular territory. There were paper routes, and then there were paper routes that were coveted because of certain circumstances. And so I remember, I hadn't thought about this really until we were sort of thinking about things to say for this podcast, is that I somehow realized at the time that I needed to do a good job for this guy, show up every day, make sure the papers got delivered. Basically, I was, riding my bicycle around the post-production area of Hollywood and the movie industry. But there was a paper route that occurred at the Paramount Studios where you just had to ride your bike there and park your bike, and then you could walk around the various sound stages, and you didn't have to ride your bike all over a neighborhood to deliver the same number of papers. And that was a coveted paper route, and my best friend had it. And so I'm waiting for him to give it up, and I know that he's a little older than I am, so he's going to get his driver's license before I will. And as it played out, he gets a car before I do, like 6 months before I do. And he gets a job delivering something in his car. And so that spot opens up. So I get the Paramount route, which everybody wants, because now, when the red light goes off, you can go on the sound stage of Bonanza and you can sell papers to all the actors that are doing Bonanza. And, Elvis Presley is over there in a sound stage doing Blue Hawaii, and Frank Sinatra is doing Assault on the Queen. You can see I've told the story before. I know the movies involved in all that. And I used to sell a paper to Edith Head, which was, the costumer of the day. And so I realized that, and the other thing too, from a standpoint of money management, this was not a paper route where you threw a paper on a driveway every day and then had to go collect the money at the end of the month. These actors did not have loose change in their costuming, and so you gave them the paper every day, and then they said they would pay you 50 cents on, Friday. And so you had to make sure that you showed up and that you remembered who owed you the 50 cents. And, I used to give a paper to Buddy Ebsen when he was doing Beverly Hillbillies. And every day when I walked on the set, he would ask me, how was school today? Good, glad to hear it. Thanks for the paper. Okay, make sure and see me Friday for your 50 cents. And he would give me 50 cents and an extra quarter for a tip. So all of those experiences of keeping track of your money and making sure that you showed up, and these people expected you to show up in the afternoon with a paper. They're on a movie set with nothing to do and they want to sit down and read the paper.
Yeah.
So anyway, those tools that I learned as a paper boy, I think were, I hadn't really thought about it in the past, but they stuck.
Well, it sounds like those lessons really shaped your career. And
yeah,
it's another interesting, we help some of our clients learn some of these same lessons.
Right.
We have a whole soft skills training where we talk about sort of the importance of these relationships, of the dependability, the intergenerational relationships, and being able to really appreciate each other in different ways, including the other paper route.
Yeah.
Toni, what were some of the lessons that you learned early on that had shaped your career and maybe had the biggest return on investment?
Well, my nephew and niece being handicapped, that was big, because when I went to teach, I was a substitute teacher. That's what I chose to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I always chose to do the calls that were for special needs. And that really, because of them, and because of growing up with them, I mean, they're in their 40s now, but growing up and going to their school and going to the parents' night, and they're my nephew and niece.
Yeah.
And that's what shaped me completely, was being able to have the special needs ability that were, for me, the most important.
Yeah,
that was my entire career.
And I'll just make a comment that many teachers were reluctant to take those calls because they didn't feel like they had the skills to deal, because some of the kids were quite compromised. And Toni, bless her heart, none of that frightened her. And so she was particularly in the Santa Ana School District, the the special needs teachers knew that if they needed the sub, and in those days, in the early 90s, they were using sort of a crude mechanism by way of where the telephone would call you and offer you the job, and you'd let it know that you were willing to take the job and all that. There was no internet at that point. And so she knew that these teachers that had the special needs classes were always going to request her, because they knew that she understood the class and understood the students, and didn't have any qualms or fears of being able to do the job. So.
Well, and this is what you're talking about, I hear in this skill realm, but what I really hear is this generosity of spirit. And you two embody that not only with your acts of service, the way that you relate with people, but also with how you contribute. And Toni, you talked about your dad and his work as a philanthropist as well. I would love to hear and know, what is it that motivates both of you to be, you are what we describe as recurring givers. Over and over, you answer the call. We recently put out a request for an AED, a defibrillator, to be installed, and you were right on it to make sure we had 2 defibrillators in our locations. Over and over, you attend galas and are more than generous. I want to know, what is the guiding principle? What motivates you to be so generous to working wardrobes and in general?
I think for us, first of all, we discuss everything. I know what's going to happen. I know where it goes. I know who's going to get it, etc. And I think for us, because we discuss it, because we know what our priorities are, and they're not always the same. They're just not always the same. But because we have a knowledge of what each one of us wants and how we want to do it. I mean, come COVID, I made sure that my donation that went out through the foundation went to COVID families. Not even a question. I mean, it was not, Toni, can you do this? That was it. And Terry and I feel the same way about when we donate to people or events or you can answer that better than I can.
Well, I know I don't want to, no, if you have a thought there, I mean, I don't want to step on your lines or anything, but I think probably one of the things that makes it easy for us is that as we have been fortunate enough to have the resources to allow us to do this, we made some decisions early on. We have a nice house that we love, and we'll probably never move from there. That's how much we love it. And we made the decision early on that, a nice house is good enough. You don't have to live at the beach. A Mazda is good enough. You don't need a Mercedes. You can have a hobby. I was into working on, classic cars and stuff, and I let that get a little out of hand. But
Very out of hand.
But the point is that we basically looked at our resources and said, we don't need this extra money. Other people need this money, and it's been very easy to share that extra money, because we made the decision early on that we weren't going to spend it on
frivolous things,
on big expensive things to either make to flatter your own ego, or to show off to other folks. And so that's really what it's about. It's the fact that because of those decisions, we can afford to do this, and other people need this money more than we do. Yeah. That's it.
And our great-grandchildren live across the street, and believe me, they're always looking. Not really looking.
Well, I think that is an important message to the next generation, what you just shared, which is how we can have enough and be just as satisfied and fulfilled, and still make a very large impact in our community, in the lives of others, and the way that we are giving of ourselves and our largesse. Well, I want to go to break, and we will take just a moment for a break and come right back with more questions and answers with the incredible, inspiring, and generous Terry and Toni McDonald. Welcome back. I am Bonni Pomush, CEO of Working Wardrobes, here with Stefaan Poortman, our Chief Revenue Officer, and Toni and Terry McDonald. We're glad you're back, and Stefaan is going to take this round of questions with you. So let's get it started.
Thank you. Toni and Terry, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. So we are thrilled in 2022 to launch a new initiative at Working Wardrobes. We're calling it the Rebuilding Careers Coalition. And essentially, it is a giving collective of visionary corporate and individual philanthropic leaders in Orange County who are coming together as a group to support members of our community on their journey to employment. Given that COVID and the effects of the pandemic are still top of mind for so many, how do you think Working Wardrobes can attract more supporters to this initiative?
I think, first of all, they have to know what it is. And I think possibly, I mean, like today you had that meeting that I was on the list for. I think that you have to let the community know. And there's lots of ways to let the community know. There's lots of involvements you can get, and there's plenty of women and men who would like to be involved. That's what I think.
Well, I see that as we go forward with social media, that's really the space to be heavily involved in, spending a lot of time thinking about how you're engaging on Facebook or Instagram. And without maybe getting out in front of my skis here a little bit, I think maybe one of the subjects we were going to talk about is if you look at public television, their fundraising now is completely geared towards sustaining donors. They, sure, they'd love for you to send in $100 this afternoon because you're watching this show. But what they really want more than anything else is that $10 or $20 donation every month that comes out of your checking account or comes out of your credit card. And the one thing that I would say about that is this year when I was doing our taxes a couple of months ago, I sort of yelled across the house and I said to Toni, I said, it probably only amounts to a couple of $1,000s or something, maybe a little bit more. I said, but you would be amazed at how many different people were sending $10 and $20 and in some cases $50. It's just amazing how many different organizations were, because I just, I see somebody needing help. And so what's a $10 bill every month, and we can afford that. And to have somebody sign on where you can count on that money, and now it does wonders for your budgeting, of this organization. Now you can say, well, we can reasonably calculate that we'll have this much money in sustaining donors. So I would think that all of your, and also maybe you'll end up doing a legacy program and things of that nature later on down the line. But certainly making sustaining donors and that kind of an effort, that should always be sort of the first pitch, I think. Don't settle for just the one time. You'll of course settle for the one-time check, but you really want to try to get people to call and offer up the credit card or whatever for a sustaining donor. And I think that public television is probably the best example of the reason they're doing it is because it's successful.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. You hit the nail on the head there. A lot of nonprofits are following this mold and getting their donors to move from transactional or one-time donations to this subscription or recurring revenue, because it provides so much more regular, a steady stream of income and so much more knowledge. You're visionaries in that you understand that and you abide by those principles. How do you think we can get more of our donors to follow suit and think about providing support on a monthly basis rather than sort of once per year?
I'm not sure that once per year for an amount is bad. I think a smart woman always, it was a given amount and you paid it for the year, and that was your pay CET
Right.
program. I always felt comfortable with that, but a lot of women didn't. And I don't know, I would love to know how to get to those women who thought that if they give the 20, I'm not even sure how much it was, but $25 a session was going to make them smart women for the year. I always felt comfortable with paying it in one lump sum, but not everybody is me. And
Right.
you know,
Well, we have to think about, you know, what avenues they can explore to tell that story. I think probably just, you know, I'm a big fan of social media and using, you know, Facebook and the various different outlets to get your message across. I think it's a matter of just trying to make the case that a steady stream of income allows us to plan better and use the resources better and not have to not have a feast or famine occurrence with the finances. That if you can smooth out the income coming in, it's to everybody's benefit. It's to your benefit because you can budget, and you'll know that the money is always there. You don't have to put all your emphasis on the yearly gala and hope that you make a particular goal. Better that money come in on a monthly basis and you can count on it. So how you tell that story is up to you, but probably through social media. That seems to be where you can engage the most people now at this point. And or maybe explore doing a really slick video and going to cable access and advertising on, you know, the news stations or something. I think that's where your target audience is, probably the people that watch MSNBC and CNN and Fox. People who are interested in current affairs, I think, as a general rule, probably have the disposable income that would feel comfortable with that kind of an idea.
Well, and by virtue of watching the news, they're aware of the workforce situation
Right.
and how much it is just mission critical that
Yes.
people are empowered and able to, what we say is we offer a hand up, not a handout. People who are wanting to re-enter the workforce, rebuild their career, and experience that power of a paycheck are able to ask for help, know that they deserve it, and leave through this process being not only transformed on the inside through skills and resume building and interview prep and all of these things, but then we make sure the outside even matches. So that transformation on the inside is actually visible when you're standing a little taller with more confidence and
Absolutely.
you are dressed in a success suit, possibly donated by the McDonald's.
There are so many organizations, worthwhile organizations in Orange County that are providing needs that our community has. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what is it specifically that Working Wardrobes does that draws you to supporting this organization specifically.
Since I am the one that's been involved the most and over the years, I wish I had the answer. I mean, I know what I feel, what I give. That's me personally, not Terry, not anybody else. I know what I give and how I give it, and when I give it, how I feel afterward. And I think that's something that people don't, all you have to do is one little thing, and it makes you feel 1,000 times better. As I said about COVID, all I had to do was tell them one time, this is what I wanted to do. I felt great. You know, I felt great. Not that I'm not a doctor and none of this, but for me, that's what works. And we have, where we are, we have a huge amount of homeless people now in Dana Point and San Clemente and San Juan. That's where we live. And I always want to say to the lady standing outside of Costco, put on some clothes and go get a job. You know,
No, except it's not. You know,
it's not that easy.
It's not that easy. I think probably the most unique thing is that I believe that you sort of have this space somewhat to yourself. You know, the idea of making garments that are ready to wear and go out and do a job interview in was obviously a great idea of Jerry's 30 years ago, and it's still a great idea. And I think that that despite the fact that there's a lot of people that are trying to work in the space of substance abuse and homelessness and all that sort of thing, you guys have sort of carved out a niche. You've carved out a niche of the first thing you did was say, okay, we're gonna dress you so you can go on an interview and look proper. Oh, okay. We can also, as time goes on, we can also get into the areas of training you how to write a resume, how to interview,
Oh yeah,
all
I
those
remember
kinds of
that.
things. So you sort of have this space to yourself, and probably, just driving home the importance of being dressed properly for an interview, but more importantly, having the tools of either resume writing, interviewing skills, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the whole package.
The whole package.
Mm-hmm.
So revenue is really all about providing the resources for us to further our mission. As we say, more money equals more mission, and that's
Right.
about more impact
Absolutely.
in the community. How would you like to see Working Wardrobes deepen our impact in 2022 and beyond?
Well, I have to tell you that the day they opened up VetNet was one of the most exciting days in my life. First of all, knew Michael. We had gotten to know him. But what a challenge, what a fabulous time, what a fabulous step forward. I mean, and he knows how I feel, what a step forward into the next level of life is for VetNet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has, Working Wardrobes is Working Wardrobes and VetNet and on and on and on. It goes on and on and on. But that was, if you're asking me how I felt about it or what did it for me, VetNet did it for me.
Well, and what an opportunity to give back to the individuals in our community who are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice
Absolutely.
for our true empowerment, right? The freedoms we experience as Americans in this country is not to be taken for granted.
That's for sure.
And what an honor it is for us to be able to help our veterans make that transition to the civilian workforce. And you're right, Toni, it's not just the veterans speak to our hearts for sure. We're also helping people who are homeless and veterans, people who are coming out of the justice system. Maybe they've been incarcerated or on probation or parole. There are people in our community who are not in your situation. They are seniors who do not have a steady income and need to get back to work and need, again, that bridge built over barriers so that they can gain the computer skills or come into a new knowledge base that they are able to then give of their talents and strengths. Terry, what about you? What are you hoping to see us deepen our impact with or through or to whom?
To Terry.
No, I think probably just more of the same, and I would say offhand that I don't think that I'll give you a quick example. Probably most everybody that lives in Orange County has seen the commercials for the jewelry box jewelry store on Lake Forest with the man and the woman who are partners, Jack and Christine. Is it Christine? Yeah. It just so happens that that particular individual, Jack, used to work for Toni's dad at one time. But anyhow, they claim that doing those commercials on cable TV is really quite affordable when you consider driving the traffic back to your retail store or making the case for Working Wardrobes. And I don't know whether you have any desires on trying to capture. I don't know whether you intend to do some kind of a fundraising kind of thing where you would invite the general public in. I don't know whether that's on your radar or not, but I can't help but believe that telling your story on cable TV is your next step. And I've sort of suggested that to another nonprofit that I'm involved with, because I think that, like I say, just seeing what those commercials of Jack and Christine's are pretty folksy and pretty low tech. But it has really benefited them in spades to drive traffic to their store. So I think you could probably do, the same thing for not a real big chunk of money. First thing you'd have to do is maybe do a campaign to raise the money to have somebody come in and do a real slick video, a professional looking video, and then approach Cox and say, what kind of deal can you do, on a number of spots,
Well, I think I might make your day partially, because starting in April, we have a commercial that will be played. It's a public service announcement through
Perfect.
Cox, and it is not touting the hanger stores. So that'll be, I think, our next initiative. But it is this call to clients. And really, I think that call to clients is also a call to volunteers, right? So the commercial really shares how you can come and receive employment services, workforce development that rebuilds your career with us. And I think you're right. The next step will be to share not just that piece of how we can help, but also how you can help.
Well, prior clients can very easily become today's donors,
Right.
once they've, clawed their way up the ladder of success in whatever field they're in.
Yeah.
I think a lot of clients would say to themselves, I need to give something back here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I want to just kind of bookend this conversation, because Toni, you said something about, when I give, I feel so good. And I hear this from both our clients, our donors, and our volunteers. And all three will say essentially that I feel almost better having given than I think the person receiving did.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
it has been just a delight to be with you today. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
your ongoing support and
Welcome.
inspiring others, hopefully the next generation, to be recurring givers and following your footsteps. And thank you so much for sharing what motivates you about helping empower others in our community through the ways that you can contribute.
You're welcome. Thank you
You're
for
so
having us
welcome.
today.
Turn me on.
Thank you for joining our conversation. I certainly learned something, and we'll continue to reflect on this conversation. I want to thank Toni and Terry McDonald, and of course our Chief Revenue Officer, Stefaan Poortman, for joining me today. This has been another episode of Rebuilding Careers. We'll see you next time.